Well, hello again, Liam from Unique Cars and Parts, and I'm with Brad, curator. Is that your right job title?
Museum coordinator is the one that we're officially called.
Well, curator does sound, got a bit of joie de vivre about it.
Yeah, look, I've been a curator in museums for about 21 years, so yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, so I'm going to call you chief curator of the National Motor Racing Museum here at Bathurst, Mount Panorama. It sits just behind the what was the motel we stayed in last night, Joey? The Regent. Is it? Ridges, yeah. Not bad digs for the night, and right on the track, about 10 paces to the track actually. But we're standing in front of one of the most important cars you've got on display here, and one that's owned by the City of Bathurst and therefore the museum, permanently on display. If you come to the museum, you're always going to be able to see this beast, I would imagine, unless you're putting it around the track, keeping it road going. This is a 67 XR GT Falcon, powered by a 289. Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, no worries.
A 289 V8, and it was good for 186 kilowatts.
Yeah, something sort of in that ballpark. Absolutely.
It's written here. Let me have a look. I'm cheating.
Yeah.
100. Let me sound smart. 168 kilowatts, I believe, Brad.
Yeah, that's exactly what they said on the brochure.
Yes. So this thing was an absolute beast, and we spoke earlier about the dominance of the BMC Minis, and you said they were in the top 9 positions of 40 odd cars that were at Bathurst the previous year, weren't they?
Absolutely. And it's amazing to think that you've got a little 1275cc Mini, which is a shopping car really, and then 12 months later the V8s had arrived, and that was really the start of what we now know as that sort of classic era of Ford V8s. And the year after, 1968, then the Holden V8s arrived, and then it was all on for young and old.
So as I look at that Mini, I think to myself of Top Gear and a Grand Tour thing, and I think that we could well call the hamster, and this we'd call the Clarkson.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. Having said that, in 1967, the Minis were giving the Falcons a bit of a hurry up. They might not have been as quick in a straight line, but certainly across the top of the mountain, you didn't have to take your foot off the throttle. And
you were saying that back in those days, Conrod Straight was really, really long. Do you know how long the straight was?
I think it was 1.8 miles sort of in total, so it was a good long straight.
And coming out of Forest Elbow, as I've experienced myself yesterday, you've got a bit of a run up to it because it actually is going downhill, goes slightly uphill again and then downhill. Was that hill originally there, or did they put that in before the chase to sort of slow people down a bit?
No. In fact, there were 2 hills on Conrod Straight in the old days pre the chase. So the chase came in 1987. Where the Dunlop Bridge is, or whatever the current sort of sponsor on the bridge outside the museum is, that was the second hump, and in fact that was a lot of the problem. They'd been going so fast, by the time they got to the second hump, the front of the cars were getting airborne.
Yeah, well, look, one of the most tragic incidents I remember, I was watching this, and I've forgotten which year it was, Danny Holm, and he was tragically died at the wheel. He had a heart attack.
Yeah, absolutely. That was in the 92 race. But in fact, the reason that Caltex Chase came out is in 1986, Mike Bergman had a fatal accident, went off the side on Conrod Straight and actually hit the base of the bridge, and that was the reason that the Caltex Chase was introduced for the 87 season.
And what year was that, Brad?
That was 86 with Mike Bergman.
Okay. Now, had there been any fatalities before that?
There had been fatalities in other places on the mountain, certainly with motorbikes and also in the 1950s, but this was the first time a fatal accident in a touring car happened on Mount Panorama.
Okay, so these things obviously were fairly, I hate to use the word safe, because did these things have disc brakes all around?
No, absolutely not. They had discs on the front, but sort of drums on the back. Not much in the way of a roll cage. They might have had a single hoop over the top of the seat behind the driver, but a lap-sash seatbelt and no protective equipment other than a helmet. So very basic.
I'm looking at this, and it looks dead set like what you would buy if you went into a Ford dealership in 1967 and said, "Look, give me the V8 powered GT. That'll do nicely." Lap-sash seatbelt, no roll cage. Literally, you drive it to the track and race it.
Absolutely, and that was the rules. It was series production cars, and after the race, the cars were pulled down and made sure that they were compliant with the workshop manuals and the factory dimensions in all aspects. They pulled the engines apart before they could confirm the final result of the race. These things had to be purely showroom stock.
Yeah, and that makes this thing very special indeed, because then, as I look at the later model cars, they changed considerably, didn't they? When did they relax the rules of those?
Look, It was really sort of from that early 70s period, they started to put roll cages in cars. They started to have some more freedoms in the engine, the brakes, the tyres. And then by 1973, they introduced what was called Group C, and that is significantly sort of further away from the production base. And then all the way through to the the mid-1980s when Group A came in, and that sort of was production-based, but then quite modified under the rules.
Okay, well, Brad, is this your favourite exhibit at the museum?
Look, it's not, but it is certainly it's a very nice car.
Okay, you've piqued my interest now. Which is your favourite exhibit?
Oh, look, I'm a fan of the 1976 Bathurst winning L34 Tirana. That's probably my favourite in the museum.
And that was Peter Brock behind the wheel?
No, that was Bob Morris and John Fitzpatrick.
Was it the Yellow Canary that they called it?
I've not heard that one before, but yeah, the 76 car was the L34. Brock won in 75 in a yellow L34 as well.
Okay, all right. Well, Brad, thanks again for your time. We're just going to go and interview Brad now about his pretty sharp-looking 220S Mercedes. Is it an S?
SE.
220 SE Mercedes. Okay, thanks again, Brad.
No worries.
Good on you, mate.